What is up, everybody? Welcome into the Pack-A-Day podcast happy hour. So pumped to be joined by three incredible guests today. My first guest is the one and only Daire Carragher. You can follow him on Twitter at Daire Carragher. On Twitter, obviously, he is a contributor for Packer Report. He had an awesome article out this week about what it kind of means for the Packers to be there and his entire journey. So make sure to check that out. It's absolutely phenomenal. He is going to be at the game, covering the game. We also have Mark Oldacres from Cheesehead TV. You can follow him on Twitter at Mark Oldacres. As mentioned, contributor over at Cheesehead TV. He is also going to be at the game. And then we've got superfan Kelsey Watson. You can follow her on Twitter at Kels Watts. And she is in London as well, also going to the game. So I wanted a bit of an international flair for this episode, since it's going to be taking place in London. We've got three people who will be at the game. So friends, thank you so much for joining me. So excited to be talking Packers Giants with you.
It's a pleasure.
Thanks for having us.
Awesome. I set you guys up all perfectly for that, as I do as a host. So Daire, I want to start with you. You're going to be going to the game, covering the game. You had an awesome article, as I mentioned, up this week on PackerReport.com. But what does this game mean to, obviously, fans in the area? And what does it mean to you to be able to be kind of covering this game?
It means absolutely everything. I mean, we've had 31 NFL teams come over to London, and we've just been waiting on the Packers, and we thought it was never, ever going to come, but it's about time that we finally got there. So, I'm really, really pumped for it. Obviously, you guys too. We've got people in America kind of say, you know, what's the point of these games? Is it all just a bit of a cash grab by the NFL? The sport's growing so much over here. The games do so much for the buzz around London and around the entire of the British Isles. I mean, it's a far bigger deal than you could ever imagine for a regular season game.
That's absolutely amazing. I'm so pumped for you guys. Mark, what about you?
Yeah, honestly, it's felt like such a long time coming. I mean, we knew kind of one day it would eventually happen, and it took a rule change by the NFL of the way teams that kind of adding an extra home game for them to. It felt like that was almost with getting the Packers over to London in mind, in a sense, you know. So it's amazing. I can't wait for it, and I have a feeling it's going to be such a Packers home game vibe, you know. So I think that's going to be amazing. As much as Coach LaFleur might be not looking forward to it, I think once he gets in the stadium and kind of sees the vibe of how many Packers fans are there, I think it's going to be just an amazing experience for everybody that's never got to see their team play before. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to it.
He was a little bit more cantankerous than normal this week about playing in London. Not specific, like he never mentioned it specifically, but you could just tell wasn't exactly a huge fan. Kels, what about you?
Yeah, I've been to Lambeau a couple times, and I mean, nothing can beat Lambeau, but I'm super excited to go to a game here. I do agree. I feel like there's a huge fan base with Packers fans here. I feel like it's going to feel like a home game more than anything. Even I wasn't at the game. I was here last weekend for the Vikings Saints game, and I feel like I didn't see as many, green and gold out there like I have so far with Packers fans being in the city. So I'm super excited to be in that atmosphere and see what it's like to see an NFL game in London.
Not sure. Kelsey, I'll ask you this since you're actually right in London, but like, have you seen more green and gold? Has there been a Cheesehead presence out in London yet, or is it still a little bit too early?
I've seen a little bit. Yeah, I've seen some Packers gear. I've seen it on Twitter as well, which is really cool. But I feel like this weekend is going to be big, especially, I think today, tomorrow, and then obviously for the game on Sunday. I think it's going to be very prevalent. There's going to be a lot of Packers fans.
I would put a lot of money down on it being basically a Packers home game with a lot of green and gold, a lot of go Pack Go chants.
Yeah.
Should be really, really amazing in that regards. Daire and Mark, have you guys ever been to a Packer game before?
No, I have not. This is going to be my first time. I'm still working through ways to get out to Lambeau. I mean, it feels like every time you're almost there, there's one last hijink in the way, whether it was COVID. I was trying to get out to the 49ers game for the divisional round last year. Thank God I didn't. So this is going to be my first Packers game. I'm so pumped for it.
Mark?
Yeah, I actually went to Lambeau last year, so that was my first time. I went to Pakers Bears. So that was obviously an amazing game. Like, you had the result pick six, and yeah, it was genuinely it was pretty unbelievable. Like seeing actually like Aaron Rodgers throw passes like in real life, like it was pretty cool. And like Devontae Adams, obviously, like at the time, I felt like I was watching Aaron Rodgers' last game, like it was my last chance to see him. But obviously, it was actually Devontae. It was my last time to see in a Packers uniform. But yeah, it was amazing. So I'm interested to see kind of like, obviously it's going to be completely different vibe, but yeah, like I'm equally as excited anyway. So.
I have legitimate goosebumps for you guys just being able to obviously go and like just the enjoyment that you guys are going to get out of this. Dart, we got to get you to Lambeau. If you ever need a place to stay, hit me up. But we'll make it happen because like Mark, obviously like you were just there last year for your first time. If you had to put it in words, like I'll just say really quick, whenever I go in, so like when you're going in from a media standpoint, you go this like insane, stupid way. So you go in like a media entrance and then you take a stairway up. And then like in this outdoor portion, you go through like this long like bridge through like, I don't even know how to explain it. And then you go inside and take an elevator up. It's so weird. But as you're on this outside portion, you go right where like fans are coming in on one side of the stadium. And one of my favorite things to do is I pause every single time for just like a minute. And I just watch like people come into the stadium and the pure joy on their faces. And I just know like somebody down in that group is probably seeing Lambeau for the first time. And for somebody who's been there since I was 7 years old, and I'm not going to say how long ago that was, but as someone who's been there since like 7, 8 years old, whatever it was, and is like, I still to this day get goosebumps going in and like going into that tunnel and you come out and the bowl is there and you see Lambeau Field. I know we're not talking about Lambeau this, but it's still just such a special thing. So Mark, what was your experience like the first time you did it last year?
Yeah, a lot of what you just explained is like it basically like because I was lucky enough to hang out with like Aaron and Corey from Cheesehead TV and Tim Backus as well before the game and stuff like that. So and everybody was kind of telling me like, oh, wait until you go into the bowl for the first time, like it's going to be absolutely amazing. And I was kind of like, well, yeah, like I'm sure it'll be cool, but like I've been to sports stadiums before, like
no,
it's and I wasn't like prepared. And then when I actually walked in and Tim got like a video of like me going into the bowl for the first time, and it was literally like it was special. Like truly, I just couldn't believe it. Like it's such a surreal experience for somebody that's kind of lives overseas because it's this thing that you've been connected to for such a long time. To actually see it in person, it's almost a shock that it's actually real. That it's like, oh, this like stadium it like actually exists. I don't just watch it on TV. Like I'm here now. Like So yeah, it was such a surreal, special like experience the whole time I was there. So yeah, it was amazing. I can't recommend it enough to like any Packers fan. I mean, obviously you want to go, but you have to go. It's so special.
Dara, if you check out at some point while you're booking your flights and booking your tickets to Lambeau, I totally get it. Don't worry about it at all. But no, I had the opportunity last year to go. It was Dusty Evely, Perry Goldstein, and Maggie Loney and myself went to the Lions game Monday Night Football week 2, I think it was last year. And it was Perry's first time at Lambeau. And I almost had like everyone kind of like just stand back as she walked through that opening portion. Cause I'm like, just let her have that moment because there's nothing quite like it. And it's pretty amazing. So no, absolutely awesome. Kelsey, what was your first moment at Lambeau?
Yeah, I went, it was 2019. So before the pandemic, it was a Raiders Packers game. It was such a good game. And yeah, nothing can compare to Lambeau, honestly. And the second time I went, I made sure to get really good seats. So I was in the end zone. I think I was row 5. And I was determined that I wanted to sit really close to the field. And I was with my friend and he was laughing at me. He's like, this is like Disneyland to you. I'm like, it is, honestly. It's better than Disneyland. Like, it was insane. It's just the feeling you get there and just being in the atmosphere, all the history, even just being around the Lambeau, Titletown, everything. I love it. I feel like I was like from there in another lifetime or something.
Instead of stupid
I
Mickey Mouse
love
ears,
Green Bay.
Instead of stupid Mickey Mouse ears, you get to put cheese on your head, which is way better and way cooler.
Yeah,
big time. So I wanted to ask you guys as well, like, obviously it's not like any of you grew up in Green Bay, Wisconsin. So there has to be like everyone has their like Packers origin story. So Kelsey, I'll start with you. Like, what was your way that you became a Packer fan?
Yeah, it's kind of funny because I grew up watching sports with my dad, but he had random teams growing up. He liked the Cowboys, like questionable, and he also liked the Seahawks because just over the border from Vancouver. But yeah, I just decided on a team when I was younger. I loved the Packers, like the history and all of that. And it just kind of stuck. It was one of those things where I just picked a team and then it stuck. And then, of course, when they won the Super Bowl last, it was really exciting. And, I love Aaron Rodgers. And it's mostly just the history and Lambeau. And, it's like the only team owned by, the fans. I think that is so cool. And there's just like nothing like it. I obviously am biased, but I feel like we got the best fans in the NFL.
Absolutely. No question. Dario, what about you?
Well, whenever I get asked this question, I always wish I had a cooler story or like a really interesting story. Listen, my brother watched NFL growing up. He still is a big Broncos fan, so unlucky for him. But he was kind of the one who got me into the sport. There was no driving factor for picking the Packers, although I will say that like just the overall success of the team in the last decade plus with Aaron Rodgers has kind of been what kept me into the sport. I think if I had to pick the Lions or the Jets as my first team, would I still be half interested in American football or in the NFL at all? So I wish I had a cooler story to say why I started supporting the Packers, but I know why I stuck with them, and that was pretty much just Aaron Rodgers and his play over the last decade plus.
That's not a bad way to go about it. And like, it's just crazy what it can become, right? Because maybe if you were a Jets fan or something like that, now you're writing about the team and, you're publishing content for PackerReport.com, which is like just beyond crazy. Like that's such an amazing story. So no, I don't think there's anything boring about, like, boring is me, like growing up, 10 minutes away from the stadium and, you have to be baptized in green and gold. So
you're describing my dream, Andy.
Yes, exactly. Mark, what about you?
Yeah, so a little bit like Dara, like I kind of stumbled into it. So I think it was the first NFL game I ever watched was Super Bowl 45. So before the game, like, because they'd been advertising it a bunch on like, I think it was the BBC was showing it, and it was like a big deal that they had the rights to the Super Bowl. So I was like, I guess I'll see what this is about. And the kind of sports fan I am, I just kind of have to like pick a team like before the game sort of thing. I can't just watch it and be like, yay, sports, like, so I was kind of like arbitrarily, for no particular reason, decided like I wanted the Packers to win, and like watched about half the game. Like at this time I had school the next day, like, so I had to record the rest and like watch the rest the next day. And obviously the Packers won, and that was kind of like, I was off from there. So I think all the kind of like the extra stuff that's like cool about being a Packers fan, like the history and like Kelsey talked about kind of like the fan ownership and stuff, that was almost just like a nice bonus that I like stumbled into. It was like, oh, I'm kind of glad I attached myself to this team because actually I really relate to this team. And kind of like Dara said, I don't think I'd have stuck with the sport this long if I didn't like follow a team that's kind of, means a lot, like if you supported a different kind of team that's just like an empty franchise, like plastic team, then it's kind of like you can drift away. But yeah, that's my story anyway.
I think I love hearing those stories from people who are, not in the area of like how they become Packer fans, because like it's always something different. And I think that's the cool part is like, like, yeah, from a Packer fan standpoint, like getting to a Super Bowl and winning a Super Bowl is obviously like the crowning achievement and everything that we're all fans for. But like, you don't know like who's watching that game for the first time and is like going to convert people to being like lifelong Packer fans who are going to end up writing about the Green Bay Packers and being like contributors in that sphere. Like it's crazy. Or like the Packers, I guarantee you, going to London and playing in this game, like there will be new Packer and new Giant fans this week in overseas because both of those teams are in the area. It's crazy to think about all the different ways that Green Bay has the opportunity. This small 100,000 person town in the middle of nowhere that has no right to have a football team has like such an influence just worldwide is just like the coolest, craziest thing that it's not even fathomable to me. And like, Dara, you said like it's like your dream or whatever, like that I grew up 10 minutes from this shrine of a stadium in the middle of nowhere it still blows my mind to this day. But we got a lot to talk about. We've got obviously a game to play as well. So as cool as it is that this is in London, there's still a lot of storylines that go into this game. We had a lot of injury report updates from very early here, but not so early for you guys. From a Packers standpoint, really good news overall. Adrian Amos, Tariq Carpenter, and Devontae Wyatt all listed as questionable. Everyone practiced in some capacity. Jair Alexander, David Bakhtiari had no injury designation, so they're going to be good to go. Dara, I'll start with you. What were your takeaways from give me the Giants injury report really quick as well. They did not fare as well Cordell Flott is out. Kenny Galladay, Henry Mordeaux, Azeez Ojulari, which I think is a big loss. Wan'Dale Robinson, Tyrod Taylor, and Kadarius Toney all ruled out, and Leonard Williams listed as questionable. I think the only good news for them is that Daniel Jones is going to play. So Dara, I'll start with you. What were your takeaways from the injury report and how you think this could potentially affect this game?
Well, obviously, really good news. I mean, it's the best injury report they've got all year in terms of availability of guys. It's great to see Jair with no designation. I know that's a big one. There was really thoughts that he might be out for a number of months or a number of weeks at least. Those injuries do tend to wear as time goes on. But I think the biggest question will be if Adrian Amos isn't able to go, who steps up? Because obviously you have the option of with Jair back, you will have the option of playing Rasul Douglas at safety. Whereas if not, if Adrian Amos doesn't play, Rudy Ford played really well in that position last week. So it'll be a question to see whether they go with. I think, thanks to your great reporting, Andy, that was a kind of something they practiced in training camp with Douglas at safety. And I mean, I was pretty impressed with how Rudy Ford played last week. So I'd imagine they would stick with that. But obviously that's all just hypothetical. Adrian Amos could play and you've got a full defensive starters, which is absolutely perfect news.
And Kels, obviously great news that Jair Alexander and David Bakhtiari have no injury designation and both seem good to go for this week. Oh, sorry,
Kels. No. Oh, sorry. Yeah, no, I'm excited about that. And also, just like on the Giants end, I feel like even with Daniel Jones playing, like he has been running the ball a lot. So he has like 3 touchdowns, I believe, on the season. So not saying he's going to be like scary or anything, but he does like to run. And obviously the wide receiver room is like filled with injuries. So they're playing with different wide receivers. And of course, it's like the inevitable. They're going to run the ball even more. Like they're just going to run Saquon into the ground. I think that was pretty obvious to begin with, but even more so now without Toney and the rest of the starting wide receivers.
Kelsey, I just recorded actually tomorrow's scouting report video right before I did this. You stole a huge takeaway for me for this game, because I think everyone gets a feeling of like, oh, Daniel Jones is going to play, so he's Daniel Jones, and you're like, it just is what it is, right? But like, if he couldn't run last week, they lose to the Bears. Like they legitimately lose to the Bears if he wasn't mobile. And the fact that he now has like a little bit of a bum, leg and has an injury that could affect his mobility, that is a potential huge break for the Packers and a huge negative break for the Giants, because they married everything to Saquon Barkley in the running game. Everything was either a run or a bootleg or a play action off of like Barkley. And if all of a sudden Daniel Jones doesn't have that mobility, I think that is a crazy loss for the Giants in this game. So before I steal anything else from Mark, what were your takeaways from the injury report?
Yeah, I mean, that was kind of my biggest thing. I think I mentioned it like a couple of days ago on Twitter, was just like, I was pretty certain that Daniel Jones was going to play, just because like he kind of couldn't not play. Like at that point, obviously you knew Tyrod was out anyway. But it was kind of, he's going to play, but how's he going to look? Like if he's reduced to a pocket passer, then the Giants are like pretty toast. Like it's kind of going to be like Brian Hoyer, Bailey Zappi, whoever you want to put back there, because Daniel Jones, without the threat of like rolling out on a bootleg and running it or throwing it on the move to a wide open receiver, because they've bit on the play action because they think Saquon's going to run it, that's a completely different situation to when they have the element of kind of surprise. I think some of the other injuries in terms of like the receivers they're missing, I mean, like Galladay, they don't want to throw him the ball anyway. And the same thing with Kadarius Toney. For some reason, I'm the biggest Kadarius Toney stan in the world. So like for this week, I'm personally happy that the Giants are just deciding not to use him. But if they want to like give up on him and send him over to Lambeau for like a 7th round pick, that's fine. So on that side of things, I wasn't too kind of bothered about it. But I think nothing's changed in terms of the game plan is always going to be run the ball. Like it's going to be Saquon, like plan A, B, and C. But if Jones is even a bit less than his normal self and he can't really run as much, that's going to be a huge problem for the Giants, which is obviously great news for Green Bay.
Where can I place a ridiculous bet that like the Giants end up trading Kadarius Toney to the Chiefs for like a 6th round pick, and then he becomes like a 100 catch 1,500 yard receiver, and of course, right? Like that's just bound to happen at some point. So I need to place a bet on that somewhere. But no, I'm with you. They don't really use their wide receivers all that much anyway. Like I said, this is a run first team that I could not believe. I've never seen a team go all in on either like it's going to be a run or it's going to be a bootleg / play action. And they didn't even pretend to line up in shotgun unless it was a third and obvious passing situation. So this is going to be really interesting. I'm expecting some sort of deep shot from this from the Giants offense early in the game, just because I guarantee you after the comments from Matt LaFleur of like, hey, we need to bring an extra guy up in the box. Like the Bears played like 8 or 9 guys in the box on basically every play. The Packers are going to play tight in the box as well. And I just have a feeling that, knowing Dable and what he wants to do, like he's going to try to, make Joe Barry uncomfortable playing that extra safety in the box and try to take probably a deep shot to Slayton, I would guess, maybe even a flea flicker, which Green Bay had some issues with early in the season. So I think they're going to try to loosen up that secondary and then see if they can get that safety back. So hopefully for them getting Saquon Barkley some running lanes, but if they can't do that, I think it's going to be a very, very long day for Barkley and the Giants and company. All right, let's talk about that a little bit more. Let's go into that in a little bit greater detail. Let's talk about stopping Saquon Barkley, because this Packers run defense, not exactly, I think, where we wanted it to be at this point. And clearly going into last week, you're facing Brian Hoyer and then you get Bailey Zappi, and all you have to do is just stop the run, and they couldn't exactly stop the run. So, Kelsey, I'll start with you here. What do you think Green Bay needs to do to specifically try to, kind of hold Saquon Barkley under wraps?
Yeah, I know Coach said that he wants the defense to be a little more aggressive, and I feel like that's what we need to do. We need to really step it up and, hopefully stack the box and try to stop the run, because Saquon, once he's going. And he has 463 rushing yards on the season. Like, he is dominating. And I just feel like the run defense, just like they need to step it up. That's really all I can say, because it's been kind of questionable, especially last week when we saw, with the Patriots, but they just need to be a little more aggressive so that it can stop Saquon on the ground. So,
I'm totally with you. Mark, what about you?
Yeah, I think it's a difficult one with the run defense, because I think if it was me, like in an ideal world, yes, that's what I would do. I would just stack the box and like challenge the receivers, just like play man and just like basically assume they're going to run until if they start burning you through the air, then fair enough, then you adjust. But I just get the feeling like with the Packers, with Joe Barry, he would never admit this, but I just don't think he actually cares that much about run defense. I think it's just kind of like, you can run for 100 yards and I still don't think you're going to win. It's kind of like, I think it's the mentality. It's almost just like the Packers have lost one game this year, and it was not because of like Dalvin Cook for the Vikings. It was because of Justin Jefferson. So I feel like it's as much, they would never ever admit it, and they'll always say, oh, it starts with the run. You have to start the run. But I just think they're going to say like, Saquon's going to get his, like kind of almost no matter what you do. So it's kind of like, let him get his 5 yards to carry, and you're probably still going to win. But like, if it was me, 100%, I'd be stuck in the box, like make that adjustment and make Daniel Jones and whichever receivers he has beat you.
Here's the thing. I actually agree with that philosophy of Joe Barry's more often than not, of like,
I kind of do too.
You know what? Like, the running back's going to get some yardage. We're not going to allow any explosive runs. Our safeties are going to, come up and make the play when they need to. We're not going to allow any explosive plays down the field. You're going to have to go 85 yards, or 80 yards, over and over to try to get touchdowns. We're not going to let you do that. We're going to stop you in the red zone if we absolutely have to. If I were a betting man, I would be willing to bet almost anything that when Joe Barry went back and watched last game, he wasn't upset about the run defense. I guarantee you, he was upset about the red zone defense on the 2 touchdown drives. I guarantee you that's what he cared about, because they had 3 drives all game. They had the opening drive that resulted in a field goal, and then the 2 drives in the early second half where they got in the red zone. I don't even know if they got in the red zone on the touchdown to who's the wide receiver that I'm thinking of that they got on the
delay of game one. That one.
Yeah, the delay of game one. Devontae Parker, sorry. I don't even know if they were technically in the red zone that play, but my point being is that I guarantee you he's much more upset that they allowed touchdowns on those drives, because if you allow field goals on those final 2 drives, we're not talking about any of it, right? Like nobody cares that Stevenson and Harris went for almost 200, like whatever, even if they went for 200 yards rushing. I don't think anyone cares if the Patriots end with 9 points at the end of the day. So I mostly agree with it. That being said, I do think there comes a point in which like there's literally only one way to lose, and that was the Patriots running the football, and this week it's the Giants running the football. And like it's you almost have to reverse the mentality of like, hey, and almost every given Sunday, we know that the only way we're going to lose is if we allow a bunch of explosive passing plays and they pass up and down the field. We got to make sure they don't do that. If they run, tip your cap, whatever. But like last week and going into this week, it's like it's the exact opposite. The only way we lose is if they have successful days running the football. Take that away first, and if Bailey Zappi and Daniel Jones beat you with their arm, all right, we'll live to see another day. Like we'll tip our cap and not be worried about it. But Dara, I went on a tangent for too long. What do you think?
Well, yeah, I agree with a lot of that philosophy. The only time I think there's a flaw in that whole idea that, you know, you can let them run is that when you go down and you need stops on defense, stopping the run absolutely matters. And I think, you know, with Dable, he doesn't love outside zone. He's not a big kind of running past the tackles kind of guy. Most of Saquon's big runs have just been straight up the middle, and I mean it's really going to challenge. A lot of it's going to come down to Kenny Clark. He's going to have his enormous amount of combo double team blocks to deal with. Jaron Reed, I've been quite impressed with his run defense. He obviously hasn't got the same total amount of snaps as Kenny Clark has, but I'd like to see a big game out of those two, and I really think that they can fully stifle Saquon. And obviously, you know, Devondre Campbell's been fine this year. I'd like to see a little more of what we saw from him last year in terms of stopping the run, where like he was just, you were not going to get past him, you were not going to beat him no matter where you were in the field. And I really think that if the Packers can get a good game out of those three key guys, they should probably not have too much trouble stopping the run, as good as Saquon is.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think if Kenny and Jerron and Dean and those guys can eat up front, and Devondre can kind of get back to where he was playing from a season ago, I don't think he's been bad, but he just certainly hasn't been first team all pro level to what he, you know, was a season ago. So I think there's a step for him to take. I'm really interested to see how Quay plays in this game. I think he needs to be a little bit more physical at the point of attack. And if he can do that, I think that helps some things as well. One of the things I'm encouraged by is I think sometimes when you have a game like that against New England where your run defense doesn't really hold up the way that it's supposed to, what do you do all week, right? You stress it and you're focused on it and you're just hyper focused on, all right, we got to be better at run defense. And it sort of marries really well with the fact that the Giants and Saquon Barkley are coming, and you got to fix an issue that you had a week ago. And now you're going to get tested even more. And I think they're just going to be ultra focused on it, that I'm hopeful that it looks a lot better than it did a week ago. Clearly Saquon Barkley and the Giants running game is probably the single biggest key to this game, I think, if we're all being honest. But Mark, I'll start with you. Outside of Saquon, what's the big key to this game in your opinion?
It sounds like really, really simplistic, but I think it's just kind of like take care of the ball. Like literally just don't give, like one of the only ways the Patriots stayed around in the game was like handing them the ball. Like the pick six obviously was massive, and Rodgers isn't going to do that every week or every season even. But I think it is just as simple as if you just make the Giants, when they get the ball, they've got to drive down the whole length of the field, then you're probably going to be in pretty good shape. I think it's just to get, and it's something they struggle with all season long. The fumbles have been there from the receivers and the running backs, and obviously Rodgers is kind of a little bit more careless with the ball than normal. So for me, that's the biggest key. Is just kind of like don't help the opposition because they're worse than you. Like you're the better team, so don't invite them back into the game at any point. If you get ahead, you have to just look after the ball. If you have to punt, you have to punt, but that's it. Don't give them short fields. Don't give them any momentum to get back in the game.
It feels like they're due for a turnover-free game, right? Like it feels like it's got to happen. Like they're so good at it usually that just feels like they're due for one of them. Kelsey, what about you?
Yeah, I'm excited about like the running game. I feel like just continuing to use Aaron Jones and AJ Dillon. I mean, we have arguably two of the best running back duo in the NFL, and they obviously can play in the passing game as well. So I feel like we can get down the field when we pass off to Aaron Jones, for example. We can get closer to the end zone or within field goal range. And I feel like don't mix up a good thing. Just hand off the ball. You know, if it's working, it's working. I feel like sometimes, you know, get a little too like crafty, like want to throw the ball, have deep passes, but you know, hand off the ball to Aaron Jones. He can run the ball far. So I feel like just continuing to use our running backs effectively.
Could not agree more. Dara, what about you?
I want to see some shots. I want to see Aaron Rodgers taking some shots downfield.
Oh, you and Kelsey are going to have a falling out.
Yeah, I guess they're opposite. I'm playing a little safe.
Mark wants to protect the ball too. I think Dusty Evelyn made a really good point during the week of the Giants love to play a lot of like single high cover one. I believe they have the highest blitz rate in the league. They blitz on almost 50% of opponents' passing snaps. Now I know you're obviously going to blitz Justin Fields more than you're going to blitz Aaron Rodgers, but I think when those opportunities are there, we've seen, like slot fades to Lazard and Dobbs and those guys who can win one-on-one. If you can, obviously, Aaron Rodgers has the ability to hit anyone on the field at any point. I think if you can get a big chunk yardage plays that can really, really devastate the Giants' whole defense and their whole plan of, single high and loading the box and stopping the run, I think that's where the Packers have an edge in this game.
No, I think you're right. And I think one of the things with that I noticed in my scouting, I think Adoree Jackson trusts his speed sometimes a little bit too much. I think we saw Christian Watson run right past Patrick Peterson in week 1. I think you probably know where I'm heading with this one. I think there's a good chance that they notice that, all right, Adoree kind of trusts his speed. I think all of a sudden Christian Watson's going to be running behind him. Would not be shocked, especially we kind of talked about it with Green Bay, right? Like Green Bay's defense, where I think Brian Dable is going to want to take some shots early to try to loosen up that defense a little bit for Saquon. I don't think it's that much different for Green Bay. I do think that they're going to want to maybe take a couple shots down the field just so that hopefully those safeties start playing back a little bit more. And then that's when Jones and Dillon can really get going. So maybe Dara and Kelsey, you guys, maybe your concepts are in line with one another more than you think. Exactly.
Yeah, they both, I do also want to see more Dobbs and Christian Watson for sure. I guess I'm privy to the running backs.
Aren't we all? I think it's really weird.
I love them.
I've said it for a few weeks now. I think Green Bay and even the fans, the coaching staff, the team, everyone is still sort of learning how to play as this specific team, because this has been a quarterback throw it 35 times a game driven offense for 3 decades, with Favre and Rodgers. This is a different team. I think if you can get to, 35 carries quicker than you can to 35 passes, that's probably a better recipe for success. Listen, this special teams isn't shooting itself in the foot. It's putting the defense in positions where they can be successful. And this defense, well, a little bit frustrating at times, has been very productive from a point standpoint through 3 games so far. In fact, I think if you were to look at the points per game, you would have probably guessed that Green Bay was 4-0 at this point and not 3-1. So I think they're still learning to play a different style of football game. And I'm with you, Kelsey. I think the more that they can get Jones and Dillon involved, I think the better off they're going to be, even if just from the standpoint that it's eating more clock, giving the defense more rest and getting them opportunities to, get back on the field, with that rest, not tired, and with a little less, play clock, a few less drives for the opposing offense. This defense is going to be able to hold up the vast majority of the time. And I think that's a successful way to win more often than not. All right, a couple other questions I want to get to before we get out of here. I can't believe that we're 4 games done through this season already. It's just insane to me how quickly it flies by. Thankfully, there's 17 games and not 16, so we're not quite a quarter of the way through the season already. But we're going to pretend we're a quarter of the way through the season already. So, Mark, I'll start with you. I will let you go in any direction that you want to go with this. It has been a quarter of the season. What's been your biggest gut feeling, takeaway, anything, maybe surprise through 4 weeks so far?
My general gut feeling around the team is really positive. I don't understand where a lot of the negativity comes from. I think maybe it's just people that are kind of always negative no matter what. But I think from an offensive standpoint, I don't think you could have expected anything else but what we've seen. They're still finding themselves out. The passing game isn't as proficient as obviously we're used to because you've taken out, Devontae Adams. So I think that was kind of expected. The run game has been efficient and more predominant than it has been in the past. Obviously, you'd still kind of like them to maybe even lean into it more, but I don't necessarily disagree with kind of the decision last week, let's say, to kind of take more shots downfield because that's what the Patriots are presenting. So I think from an offensive standpoint, I'm relatively happy with where they are now, and I'm confident they're going to be a lot better by the end of the season. And then on the defensive side, again, I know they can be frustrating at times, as you mentioned, but the points, teams in the NFL, if you hold a team under 20 points every single week, which is basically, kind of like, I know obviously I think 2 out of the 4 games they haven't done, but I mean, the last game, obviously it goes to overtime. There's a pick six in there. The defense does their job. The defense has done its job. It's doing enough to give the offense enough room to go and win the game. So like, I think on both sides of the ball, I'd have taken 3-1, absolutely. I think they have a very good chance to be 6-1 after the next few games. And I think they'll be a better team by the end of the season than they are now, which in past seasons I probably didn't feel like that. So yeah, I'm happy pretty much.
I'm with you, Dara. What about you?
I mean, my biggest takeaway is probably how, like, results-wise, this season feels so eerily similar to last season. I mean, you had the blowout disaster game in week 1, bury it. You got a really easy, like, comeback primetime game against a bad team in week 2, and it even works out that Aaron Jones was the driving factor in both games. Week 3, you go on the road to a tough top NFC team, and you prove that you can hang with teams at the top of the NFC again, or just not prove, but verify it. Like, we already had a pretty strong idea that the Packers were going to be good, but to beat a top team on the road, and then week 4, it maybe doesn't add up as much. But again, you've got, I think, in terms of the quality of team, I think this year's Patriots and last year's Steelers aren't totally, like, completely different, and both well coached teams. Big Ben Roethlisberger is probably comparable to Bailey Zappi, as harsh as that sounds. So I feel like four games through, it just feels like really, really similar to last season. We'll see if that continues onwards, and if we can get another 13-4 or 14-3 season and get another 1 seed. I'm sure some fans might not be too thrilled at a 1 seed this year, but we'll see.
I was going to ask you, if things are mirroring last year, is that a good thing or a bad thing? That's my next question.
I'm scared. I'm scared at the thought of that question.
We're scared every Packers season. We know the regular season is going to come and go. They're going to be in the playoffs, and then we all are just clenching our teeth for the remainder of the time. So we'll get to that point when we get there. Kelsey,
Oh, sorry.
Kelsey.
Oh, sorry. I think cut out. Okay.
Go ahead.
Oh my gosh, I'm sorry. Yes, I think I can hear you now. Yeah, no, I totally agree. I feel like this season feels a little bit similar because of that first game, a blowout. It just seems odd that it's like the exact same thing this season. But again, I will drive this home, but I feel like the run game has been really good. I feel like Aaron Jones has been incredible this season, especially without, and Aaron Jones can be played in the passing game as well. And obviously AJ Dillon, he's, big back, and he's barrel through guys. And I think it's a really awesome duo. And also the special teams has improved, which is great. An improvement is something, because obviously it's been a little bit questionable in previous years. So I'm happy about that. And and I think, of course, the run defense can improve, but I don't think it's terrible personally. I think there's been some great things going on, and of course there's always going to be improvements any season, but yeah, I have a positive outlook. I mean, I always do every season, but I think things are going to be good moving forward.
Yeah, I'll say with the caveat that I don't think they've played a great team, certainly not a great healthy team yet. I'm very optimistic based on some of the flashes that we've seen, right? So like, what I'm always looking for is like, all right, what does your A+ effort look like? Because we know that if you want to win a Super Bowl, that by the time the playoffs and Super Bowl come along, you've basically got to be playing A+ level football, right? So if you're not, it's over anyway. Like if you're playing C+, like Green Bay's had 3 straight really great seasons. They played C+ football in the playoffs and they got killed. They got eliminated. They've won 2 total playoff games in the last 3 seasons combined. It hasn't been good enough. But if you're playing your A+ football at the right time, what does that look like? I think we've seen an offense specific, like look at the second half against the Patriots, look at the first 3 drives minus the Aaron Jones fumble against the Buccaneers. Those are 2 pretty good defenses. And in those small snippets looked really freaking good. And I mean, really freaking good. And I don't think the offensive line is like at like 50% of what I think they can ultimately play at yet. And they looked really freaking good in small doses, right? The special teams is not an unmitigated nightmare and makes me want to lose sleep and just pull my hair out and do every other negative cliche that you could possibly imagine. And that is a huge win. And I think even in small flashes, we've seen it actually do some pretty awesome things, pinning teams deep. Pat O'Donnell's looked good. Amari Rodgers hasn't done anything too crazy. Had a couple 20 plus yard return, I think, one time, which is unbelievable. So I think we've seen some flashes there. And then defensively, again, caveat, I don't think they've played a really great team yet. We've seen some real impressive, like you outside of 3 drives against New England, yes, backup quarterbacks, whatever, but like completely dominant. We've seen Rashawn Gary take a step. Kenny Clark looks amazing. The coverage has been solid. Like we've seen some real flashes. So if you tell me that like you get the A+ version of each of those in a game in a playoffs in a Super Bowl, yeah, to me, that's a Super Bowl caliber team. Now they have to prove to me they can do it for a game, like not only just one game, but 3 or 4 games consecutively. And they have to prove to me that they can do it in a, like in a whole game, like actually, do it throughout the course of a game and against good teams. But if they can do the flashes are there. And I think overall through a quarter of the season, based on like expectations going in, I'm actually fairly pleased with where things are at right now. All right. Enough of my diatribe. A couple of quick questions before we get out of here. We had this question come in. Oh, sorry, that's not the question. I missed the wrong one. Where is Josiah DeGuara? Mark, I'll let you answer first, and if you have a take on this.
My answer for this is wherever they ask him to be. Like I think with Josiah DeGuara, like there's always going to be a little bit more focus on him than maybe there actually should because he's a 3rd round pick. But I think he's just the guy who, if you need him to line up in the backfield and block, which is kind of like what a lot of the time he's been doing on run plays, he's going to do that. And like to the average like fan just kind of watching the game, you're probably not even going to notice what he's doing. If you want him to go out on routes, he's going to be there, but like he's not that guy. He's not Robert Tonyan. He's not the main like focus of the passing play. So I don't know. I think that's his role. His role is, like, they talk about role players all the time, and I think he's the guy that kind of like, and I think this is similar to a lot of their kind of tight end room. It's a little bit like Tyler Davis, is that like, I know a lot of fans don't kind of see what value Tyler Davis has, but I think the value is they ask him to do a lot of different things, and whatever they ask him to do, he just does it, and he does it to like a solid level. Like he's never going to be a superstar, but he does what they ask him to do, and he can do a lot of different stuff. So that's kind of like where I'm at with him. And I think that's just going to be his role.
Yeah, to Shane's point here, I don't know how aggressive I'll be with it, but I do think Rodgers has his guys right. And I think he wants Tonyan and Davis on the field, or excuse me, Tonyan and Lewis on the field more often than not. I think when Davis and DeGuara are on the field, sometimes he's maybe not quite as excited about it. But I do think, to your point, I think DeGuara has his role on the team. Like there's only so much you're going to play a H-back / kind of fullback in a game, right? Like you have a limited amount of snaps that you can play. I think overall he's been doing his job for the most part. I've actually graded him out pretty well through the course of 4 games so far. So I personally would actually like to see him a little bit more. But they haven't used him a ton. I get it. It's not like they're losing out on a ton with DeGuara not being on the field all that much. All right. And then Kelsey, I'll start with you here. When you guys are watching a Packer game, do you guys stay up late to watch the game at 2 a.m. your time, or do you wake up early?
Yeah, so far I have stayed up. I've been riding it out. Broncos country, let's ride. Yeah, not really riding anymore, but yeah, that was a rough game. I feel like I probably didn't need to stay up that late, but I feel like I was kind of a part of like a collective because everyone on Twitter, my whole feed was just everyone talking about the game. But yeah, long story short, I do usually stay up because I feel like when I was obviously back home in Vancouver, I was watching at normal times and it's just my routine. I also play fantasy football, so I'm like very heavily invested. It's kind of hard not to watch.
That I want to talk for another 45 minutes with another 5 drinks about that game last night because that was unbelievable. Yeah, Dara, what about you? Are you a like early riser or a late stay upper?
Well, I try to be a late stay up where there's usually one game every year that just gets you and you're gone by the midway through the second quarter. This team plays so many primetime games. During the off season, you're kind of like, you know what? If Rodgers goes, maybe at least I can get a bit of sleep in the autumn months, because it's ridiculous sometimes. I always look back at the Monday night game against the Falcons, week 4, 2020. That game, I can't remember the reason, but that game was pushed back like an hour. I think it started like 9:30 local time in Green Bay, and that was a rough game to stay up for. At least they walked all over the Falcons. I could get to bed early, but it's really a grind. I spoke before about how it is. There's some kind of beauty to it. You know, you don't have anything else to do at that time of night, so that's the one upside of it. But yeah, it's tough going, but I stay up.
Mark, what about you?
Yeah, I'm a stay upper as well. I mean, last night I was one of the sickos that was up until I think it was like 5 a.m. I went to sleep just because once I'm in, it's like the old saying, in for a penny, in for a pound. It's like I've invested so much time in this game that I can't just stop now. Like I can't. What if there's a touchdown finally and I miss it? Like, you know. So, but with the Packers, normally it's not as bad as it was last night. But I'm actually heading to like New York next week with a few friends, and I was kind of joking that like it's going to be jet lag isn't going to be an issue for me because I'm just going to be like finally on the time zone I should actually be in. Like I'm going to feel alive probably and awake for the first time rather than like completely out of whack because I'm staying up watching whatever game is on. So yeah.
The most underrated aspect of being a Packer fan in Green Bay, the central time zone has the absolute best times for games because it's like even the morning one, like 8:30, if you have a London game, it's kind of great waking up and then like being like, oh, there's a game on. This is fantastic. And then you get your whole slate of games from noon to 3, which is the best time frame possible. And you got like 8 games going in the Octo Box on Red Zone. And then you've got like your 3 games that start at 3:30 Central Time and then at 7:30 Central. Whereas like if you're on the East Coast, if it's the last game starts at like 8:30 is a little bit later. Obviously, if you're overseas, it gets insanely late. And then if you're on the West Coast, like that, like the Packer game will start at like 6:30 a.m. this week, or even like the noon games are like 10 a.m., which seems way too early. So like Central Time Zone in Green Bay, best slot of games possible. All right, last question from the chat here. Do we see a big dog explosive play or touchdown this week? I'll answer that one quick. There is no big dog explosive play. There may be a big dog touchdown. That's always within the realm of possibility. If there is a big dog explosive play, we all need to be like, is hell freezing over and is at the end of times because something has gone wrong in the matrix and we need to reevaluate everything at that point. All right, before we get out of here, Mark, prediction for the game.
Okay, so I'm going to go with 24-13 Packers. So like relatively comfortable. But I said that last week against the Patriots, like it was going to be really comfortable, and I was really overconfident, and I nearly regret it. So we'll see.
All right, Kels?
My prediction, Packers 21, Giants 10.
Like it. All right, Dara?
Yeah, well, the Patriots kind of scared me last week, so I'm not going to be predicting a blowout of any kind. I'll probably go like Packers 27. Giants will probably put up like 13-17. That's just a rough estimate.
I feel extremely confident that the Packers are going to win this game. I don't feel confident at all about how it's going to happen. I have no idea. If you told me it was like 9-6, or if you told me it was like 31-3, or like anything in between, I'd be like, yeah, that sounds about right. I think the Giants are good enough to be a pain in the ass. Like, I think they are well coached. They rally to the football. Dable is a great offensive mind. Martindale is a great defensive mind. They're just going to be a pain in the ass. And I think this game could be a little bit more competitive than we like. Also, the other thing is that we haven't, like, I don't think anyone's really talked about it all that much, but like the Packers have been like jet lagged when they go to the West Coast. Like when they play like San Francisco, or like they go anywhere West Coast and they have no idea how to play football anymore. How the hell are they going to respond in London? I have no idea. So if you told me like they forgot how to play football on the trip, I'd be like, yeah, they couldn't play football in California. And Lord knows what they're going to look like in London. So I think the Giants are going to be pesky and annoying. I think the Packers win. I'll say 27-13. I'm going to say it ends up being fairly easy, but like I don't know. Who knows? It could be just about anything this week. Guys, this was absolutely amazing. I can't thank you enough for doing this. Mark, tell us where we can follow you on Twitter and what you're working on.
Yeah, so you can follow me on Twitter at Mark Oldacres. I write once a week for Cheesehead TV, so I do kind of like game previews, like kind of things to look out for, X Factors type things, stuff like that. So obviously catch that before this week, and yeah, that's it.
All right, Kels, where can we follow you on Twitter?
Yeah, you can follow me at Kelsey Watson. It's half of my name, Kels and then Watson. And I'll just be tweeting about the Packers, going along with my daily life. So follow me, and I'll also be at the game on Sunday. So maybe I'll see you there.
Awesome. Can't wait for that. And then Dara, what about you?
Yeah, you can find me at Daire Carragher. I should say it down there. I always get mixed up with the camera flipped around. You can find me at PackerReport.com. I write there twice a week. You can also find me roaming the streets of London on Sunday. So if you see me, say hi. I'll say hi back.
Did you get your credential yet, or did you pick it up tomorrow?
It's come through.
Is this your first credential?
Yep, first time.
It's a pretty cool feeling, right?
Yeah, unbelievable.
It's an unbelievable feeling. Kudos to you. Enjoy that experience, because it doesn't get old. I will tell you that much. And it's just a really cool thing. So I'm really excited for you. I hope you enjoy the hell out of it. And you certainly earned it and deserve it. So guys, make sure to follow all of them on Twitter. They're all amazing people. You can follow the podcast at Pack-A-Day Podcast. You can follow me at Andy Herman NFL. That is going to do it for our happy hour. Thanks so much for joining. But until next time, and as always, go Pack Go.